All right, so here we go. This is Colossians. Paul's writing to this church in Colossae, and the Jews and the Gentiles, the whole church, is struggling. And they're struggling to put Jesus in his right place, right? They're struggling to know the story. Right in the text, he tells us the issue they're having. He says this, he says, so don't be worshiping angels. And then he says, Jesus triumphed over the dark powers, those angels and the spirit world. You're worshiping lesser things. You're following a story that is now defeated. Jesus came and defeated all that. He's the rightful heir of everything. And he's the rightful heir to the Jews. You Jews, you should know your story. This is your text. God is going to send a Messiah who's heir of all things. And you know right in the text that when the Messiah comes, the Gentile nations are supposed to come in. And they are going to be his people. And they are also going to be priests. Jews, stop blocking the Gentiles. To the Gentile audience in the same church, he is saying to them, listen, you're worshiping gods who have been defeated. The ultimate king of the nations has come. Your gods are real, but they are lesser, and they don't have your best in mind. Throw your lot in with Jesus, who is the Lord of lords, the God of gods. They too will bow knee. He is supreme over your God. Zeus has nothing. Zeus even owes his allegiance to Christ. One argument. Now here's the thing. This is the problem of the text. And I don't want to go through the whole introduction. If you weren't here last week, listen to the introduction of the sermon. But the basic idea is this. Even God cannot expect people to believe something if the solution just appears out of nowhere. Like if it doesn't fit the storyline, there's no reason to believe it. If someone walks out of the forest and says, God has given me a new ending to the book, and it's not connected to the whole story, that's nonsense. It's nonsense. And if that's what Paul does, if the New Testament introduces a Trinity, a Godhead, and the Old Testament only has one God, and all of a sudden, oh, no, there's not one, there's three. If that's a surprise, then it's not true. It's just not true. Because God is working. He's telling a story to get people to believe. And you just can't pull people in with a surprise ending or a disconnected ending. And we have been programmed to believe that in the Old Testament, there's one God who revealed himself as only one person. And all of a sudden, the Trinity's new. So Christianity is rejected by a lot of people, including the Jewish people, because when Jesus comes, they're like, there's only one. You're not the creator. There's one, right? There's one, not two. And how can you claim it? And here's the amazing bit that it was news to me, and I showed you that there's the Jews before Jesus' day and during Jesus' day talked about in the Old Testament, the second Yahweh character. He is there, and he's there in a major way in tons of stories. And their rabbis talked about him and speculated, like, who is he? How can this work? Is this the Messiah? Is the Messiah going to be this one? They talked about all of that. When Jesus came and claimed to be that, the Jews couldn't argue with him. He was fulfilling the text. And so they went the other way and just said, listen, there's only one God, so you can't be him, right? You're not the one God. Before Jesus, They were comfortable with two Yahwehs, and they were comfortable with it because it is undeniable. So we are walking through their text, and I'm trying to show you text where it's undeniable that there are two Yahwehs in the Old Testament, not one. The Godhead is there. And it's not just, you know, the word us through the Old Testament. That's not where he shows up primarily. He shows up in stories. So I'm showing you stories, okay? Here we go. Listen to Colossians, and then we're going to go into some stories. The Son is the image of the invisible God. By the way, every single phrase, and I'll show you this, every single phrase of this introduction of Jesus is the solution is a throwback to an actual story in the Old Testament. It's not just a random list of exaltations that Paul puts out. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. For he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning and firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. An absolute glorious description of who Jesus is. He is calling this church to bow knee to the King of Kings. And again, where does he get that authority? How is Jesus, a man, a God? Like, how is this possible? He's the creator? He's just a guy, and he died on the cross. Like, how can a man be God? And Paul is going to push us to the stories. Here's the stories, okay? We're going to jump in. We're going to move fast. I'm going to show you 4 stories that you just have to know. They're awesome. They're awesome. All right, here we go. Here's the first one. Last week we talked about the angel of the Lord. What's the word angel mean? Messenger. He's the messenger. Oftentimes, if it's not a person or it's just the word messenger, like you got to read the context to see. So this messenger from Yahweh is in all these stories, and he's also Yahweh. Here, it's going to be here too. Watch this. Then Moses said, "Now show me your glory," right? So he is, yeah, I don't want that one. Here we go. So here's our story. Joshua. All right? We're in Joshua. I'm going to skip Balaam again. I wanted to do Balaam last week. It's great. We don't have time for Balaam. Or Gideon. He shows up there too. We're going to jump in with Joshua. Who's Joshua? Who does Joshua come right after? Moses. Moses leads them out of Egypt. He leads them to the promised land. And God says, Moses, you can't go in, right? So he hands the baton to Joshua. Joshua now is in charge of all of Israel. And he's in charge of the conquest of the promised land. So Joshua's burden is unbelievable. He has this pressure on him to lead the people of God into war against the gods and the peoples in the promised land whose sin is mounted up and who are enemies of God. That would be nerve-wracking, would it not? That would be a very hard job. So before he does it, he gets to experience God. Here's the story. Joshua. Chapter 5. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, the very first battle going into the promised land, they just crossed over the Jordan River. They're up against a walled city where the spies who went in 40 years said their cities are strong and they're walled. They have giants. We can't do anything in there. Nerve-wracking, right? Nerve-wracking. We're going to do it this time. It's not going to be less scary. It's going to be very scary. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw what? A man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up and asked him, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied, "but as the commander of the army of the Lord." So we're no longer talking about the messenger of the Lord, the angel of the Lord. Now we're introduced to the commander of, and when your Old Testament has that, it's Yahweh. The commander of the army of Yahweh. So is it Yahweh? No, that's not how you would write it, right? Yahweh in charge of his own army. No, it's Yahweh's army, and I'm the commander of it. That's two people. But as the commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down and worshiped. He worshiped. Every time someone tries to worship an angel, what does the angel do? He says, "Stop. I am not Yahweh. You don't worship angels. You worship God alone." Right? This angel, this commander, accepts worship. And look what he says. Then Joshua fell down and worshiped and asked him, "What message does Yahweh have for his servant?" He calls him Yahweh. The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy ground." We heard that one other place in the Bible. Where did we hear that? At the burning bush. Check this out. At the burning bush, God, Yahweh, says to Moses, "Take off your sandals, because the ground you are on is holy ground." And he was, in that scene, the messenger of the Lord, the angel of the Lord. What was Moses' job? To go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Was Moses supposed to make an army and go kill Pharaoh? Nope. Moses is a messenger, and who did he talk to? Yahweh, the messenger. What's Joshua's job? Is his job to go tell the people in the promised land about Jesus? Nope. He's supposed to go fight. And so the God who commissioned Moses is the same God who commissions Joshua, the next one in charge, but now he's the God that Joshua needs. Joshua needs a commander, right? Why? Because Joshua is a commander. Who's he the commander of? The Lord's army, right? It's the God I need. Do you know who your God is? He's the God you need. He's the God you need. This is God. Now Jesus, now this person who looks like a man, Jesus looks like a man. Now he's not a messenger. Now he's the commander of the Lord's army. Take off your sandals. That's that. Then Yahweh said to Joshua, wait, the commander of the army is Yahweh. The one he's talking to him. Then Yahweh said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands." How'd you do that? I'm a commander, right? I have an army. Don't worry about it. They're already defeated because I, your God, Yahweh, am also your defender, right? It's same person, Yahweh. I have delivered them into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. And then the whole story. Who is it? It's the commander of Yahweh's army. Two people. But who is the commander? He's also Yahweh. Like two Yahwehs. They're right in the story. And he's the God Joshua needs. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Judges This one is a trip. This is the introduction to the story of Judges. Moses, Joshua gets them into the land, and then Israel goes into the time of the Judges, right? This is the introduction to the story, to the book of Judges, Judges chapter 2. This one's unbelievable. The angel of the Lord, the messenger of Yahweh, right, got it, went up from Gilgal to Bochum and said, so he went in local. You're going to see in the next verse, he's there in person. The Yahweh, who is the messenger also from Yahweh, moves from one place to the other, and he says in front of Israel, right? I brought you up out of Egypt, and I led you into the land I swore to give to your ancestors. The angel of the Lord is claiming to be the one who made the promises to them, and who is the one who led you out? Not the Yahweh in heaven. No, the messenger from him. I am God. Who made the promises? God, without question. God made the promises. Which God? Yahweh. The messenger from Yahweh is claiming, I brought you out. I made the promises. I'm the one who spoke. What? I said. Listen, he's quoting himself. I said, and there's a quote. I said, that's past tense, right? I said, we're going to look at the quote. Out of this world. I said, I will never break my covenant with you. That sounds like an Abraham story when he's talking to God. I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? And I have also said, I will not drive them out before you. They will become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you. When the messenger from Yahweh had spoken these things to all the Israelites, the people wept aloud. The people, here's the summary, the people served Yahweh throughout the lifetime of Joshua, and the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things Yahweh had done for Israel, after that generation had been gathered to their ancestors, after Joshua and the first generation died, another generation grew up who neither knew Yahweh nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of Yahweh and served the Baals. They forsook Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt. One text, who brought them out of Egypt? Yahweh in heaven or the messenger from Yahweh? Both. Both. That's the answer. Because when it's just that, you can't tell. It might be the Yahweh in heaven. But who claimed to do it? Yahweh, the angel of Yahweh. Two characters, one story, clearly talking about two, and yet they are one. They're both God in the story. They're both equal in the story. They both make the same promise. You can't tell. The angel of the Lord quoted himself, right? Should we be able to find that quote? If he's going to quote himself, he's throwing us back to a story. Check out the story that the angel of the Lord is talking to Joshua. Who can he quote? He can only quote Moses. Look where he quotes from. It's the story of Mount Sinai. Mind blown. Watch this. Exodus 23. This is the law. Moses is on top of Mount Sinai. He's getting the commandments, the law, right? This is the law. He first gets the 10, And then God keeps going for 613. Moses is talking to God. This is what God says. See, I am sending an messenger, an angel ahead of you. Is he saying, Yahweh speaking, is he saying, I will go? He is not. He is clearly talking about someone else. Moses, I will send a messenger ahead of you. That's a second creature. It's a second person, is it not? Creature is a terrible word. It's a person. I am sending a messenger ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I prepared. Wait, who prepared it? Yahweh. Who is going to lead you? Yahweh, my messenger, and he is going to claim to be me as well. I prepared a place. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive you. Who has that right? God. God alone can forgive, right? This is a universal text. He won't forgive you. He won't forgive your rebellion since my name is in him. Notice it's capitalized. That's not just we have the same name. We have the same essence. We are equal. My name, who I am, who's his name? He's talking to Moses. Moses is going to say, show me yourself. And God says, I will declare my name in your presence. I am the God of your fathers. I convict for 4 generations. I forgive for eternity. I am the one. That's his name. My name is in my messenger. We're equals. For my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do what I say, who are you supposed to listen to? Both. Like, if you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, who do you have to listen to? Who's your allegiance supposed to be with? Both of them. Who are you supposed to listen to? Both of them. Are they working together? Are they clearly 2 persons? Yes, like, you can't be, that's schizophrenic if you are not, there's either 2 or something's wrong. God is clear. Do the Jews know the story of Mount Sinai? like bread and butter, right? Absolute. This is Mount Sinai, Exodus 23. Do all that he says. I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land. What's his name? Yahweh. Why? Because my name, my essence, Paul says, God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in Christ. God's name, Christ is the bearer of the name. That's all Paul's saying. He's throwing us back to Exodus 23. Mount Sinai, God declares, one of the 10 commandments is this: have no other gods before me. But there's 2 of us, and you better worship both of us equally. You better listen to both of us equally. One God, it's one of the 10. This is literally the next chapter. After God says that, chapter next, like 20 sentences after God says the first command, he tells them this story. Do not bow down. This is Yahweh, not the messenger. This is God talking to Moses, saying there's a messenger coming. This is still Yahweh's voice. Do not bow down before their gods or worship them. You must demolish them and break down their sacred pieces. That's the quote that the angel of the Lord is claiming for himself about this story, and he's not the one speaking. But but they have the same voice. My name is in them. Who do you have to listen to? Both of us. It's right there. I will establish your borders from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea and from the desert of the Euphrates River, and I will give them into your hands. Yahweh in heaven is claiming to be the author of the covenant and the one who will keep it and the one they have to obey. But in that same sentence, he says, my angel who I'm sending speaks exactly like I do because he too is my equal. My name is in him, and you listen to him just as if he were me, because he is me, and yet not me at the very same time. That's Trinity. Jesus doesn't just come out of nowhere. What's the story of the Bible? This is Moses writing. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Who said that? The angel of the Lord. Right in Mount Sinai. The pinnacle story for the Jews. Two Yahwehs with equal authority. My name is in him. Listen to him or he won't forgive you. Wow. Samuel. Now, Jesus is the Word. The Word becomes flesh, John said. John is not just pulling that out of the air. When John says that Jesus is the Word, he isn't meaning he's the words out of God's mouth. Every time Yahweh speaks, that's Jesus. That's not what John is saying. John is going to identify it out of this story. Listen to this one. This is the call of Samuel. Samuel's the last judge. He's in that same timeline. This is the end. We're going to go from Samuel to the kings, Saul, then David. So we're in this part of the timeline. So we're moving closer to Jesus. Here's this story. The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord. Before who? Everybody, capital L, Yahweh. The boy Samuel ministered before Yahweh under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord, the word of who? Yahweh. Yahweh's word was rare. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many sightings. Doesn't say we doesn't have the text. It's not talking text. It's talking a person. There are not many sightings. How do I know? Maybe you're stretching that. No, I'm not. Watch. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak, he's the high priest before Samuel. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of Yahweh, where the ark of God was. So Samuel's going to be the next leader of Israel. Eli's the old high priest, and it's nighttime and they're sleeping. There's your story, right? This is going to be the commissioning of Samuel by Yahweh himself. Then the Lord, Yahweh, called Samuel, and he answered, Samuel, Samuel, right? And Samuel says, here am I. Samuel wakes up, thinks it's Eli. So he goes, hey, you called me? Eli says, hey, man, I'm sleeping. That wasn't me. Go to bed. You're dreaming, right? And that happens how many times? 3 times, right? This is that story. If you don't know it, Samuel chapter 3. And he ran to Eli and said, here I am, you called me. And Eli said, blah, 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 for the sake of time. Now Samuel did not yet know Yahweh. Does Samuel know about God? Yes, he doesn't know him on a face-to-face basis. Now, Samuel did not yet know Yahweh. The word of the Yahweh had not yet been revealed to him. A third time, Yahweh called Samuel. Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, here am I. You called me. Then Eli realized that Yahweh was calling him. So he said, the next time, say, here I am, your servant listens. The Lord came, Yahweh came and stood there. That's how we know we're talking about vision, sightings. God is going to stand there. No one can see God and live. Who is this? This is the Word of God. Awesome, watch this. Yahweh came and stood there, calling as at other times. Who called the other times? Yahweh. It never said the Word called. Now it's changing it. Same internal story. Two characters, all identified as Yahweh. The word of the Lord came, calling as at the other time, Samuel, Samuel. Then the Lord said, speak, your servant's listening. And who said? Yahweh. Who's there? The Word of God. What does he look like? A person. Who is he? He's Yahweh. Said to Samuel, see, I am about to do something. And he talks about, I'm going to get rid of Eli. I'm going to do something. So Samuel told him everything, hiding nothing from him. That's just the details in the story. Then Eli said, he is Yahweh. He gets to do what he wants. The Lord was with Samuel as he grew up. He kept showing up to Samuel, and he let none of Samuel's word fall to the ground. Look, Yahweh continued to, what? Appear at Shiloh, and there he revealed himself. Who revealed himself? Yahweh continued to appear to Samuel, and there he revealed himself to Samuel through his word. His word is a person in Samuel. Samuel's like the guy in the Old Testament. He's a hero in Israel. Samuel's the one who brings in the kings. Like Samuel's a major character. Who is he talking to? He is talking to Yahweh face to face. But which Yahweh? The Word. And now if you look in your Bible, the Bible clearly says when you read Jeremiah, it was the Word who appeared to Jeremiah. It's the Word who appeared to Ezekiel. It's the Word who appeared to a bunch. A bunch of the Old Testament, like 5 of the Old Testament prophets spoke directly to the Word. The Word appeared to them. He's a person. John isn't, your New Testament isn't just pulling titles out of nowhere. The New Testament stands firmly on the Old Testament. It's one story. Jesus is fulfillment. He isn't surprise character. Isn't that cool? It's really cool. I think it's cool. The Cloud Rider, okay? You have to know the Cloud Rider. This is Jesus' favorite name for himself. I am the one in the clouds. I am the Son of Man. It ultimately climaxes in Daniel chapter 7. The Son of Man, we're going to read it. This is the Cloud Rider of the Old Testament. Awesome. Watch this. Watch these texts. Are you with me still? Yeah? Okay, good. There is no Deuteronomy. Who wrote Deuteronomy? Moses. Right from the beginning. The first texts. The very first stories. There is no one like the God of Jeshurun. It's another pet name of God for Israel. There's no one like the God of Israel. There's no one like who? God. It's a title. It's not a name. There's no one like the God of Israel who rides across the heavens to help you on the clouds. Who rides the clouds? God. God rides the clouds. Yeah? There's no one like him. He rides clouds in his majesty. Psalm 18. He parted the heavens. He came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced with hailstorms, storms, and bolts of lightning. Yahweh, the Lord, thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. The Most High, Yahweh, is riding the clouds, right? He's the cloud rider. That was Psalms 18. Psalm 104. Yahweh wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent. He lays the beams of his upper chambers on the waters. He makes the clouds his chariot. God alone, the God of Israel, is the cloud rider. Interesting fact, before that was written, all of this part of the world gave this title to Baal. Baal is the storm god who rides the clouds. God said, that's not Baal. That's a God trying to take my place, and he will be judged. I alone am the true cloud rider. Yahweh, the God of Israel, is the one high God, the Most High. The Most High rides clouds, not Baal. It's me. Isaiah 19, see, Yahweh rides on a swift cloud and is coming to Egypt. The idols of Egypt, the gods, idols, the word means the useless gods, useless idols. So frame it. The useless gods, the worthless gods of Israel will tremble. Why? Who's coming? The cloud rider. The cloud rider's coming. And you better bow knee. Who's he saying that to? The gods of Egypt. Look, Jeremiah, look, he advances like the clouds. His chariots come. It's all over the place. Yahweh is the cloud rider. Now we get to Daniel. Listen to Daniel. It's not Yahweh. Wait, who is it? As I looked, here's Daniel's vision. As I looked, thrones were, how many? One? Not one. Not one throne. Thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days, Yahweh in heaven, took his seat. His clothing was white as snow. The hair of his head was like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. Does he look like a man? Nope. Nope. Didn't say that at all, did it? He's the Ancient of Days. Where is he? He's on one of the thrones. How many are there? Thrones? More than one. And its wheels were all ablaze, a river. That's the vision of Ezekiel, right? The crazy chariot fire. We saw that last week. A river of fire was flowing, coming from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. The heavens are full. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. Yahweh is there. He's being worshiped and attended to by all the beings in heaven, right? It's a glorious scene. And in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one who looked like a son of Adam, a son of man. The word is Adam, actually. He looks like a son of Adam. So what does he look like? A person. This is Jesus' favorite title. And what was he doing? A son of man was coming with the clouds of heaven. Who rides the clouds of heaven? Yahweh. Yahweh alone. Only Yahweh rides on the clouds of heaven. Yahweh's on the throne, and who rides into his presence? A second Yahweh. He, the second Yahweh, the cloud rider, approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. And in the presence of Yahweh, the God of heaven, on his throne, the second Yahweh, who looks like a man, who bears the name, whose name is in him, in the presence of God, he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All power. All power. How much power? In the presence of Yahweh, the cloud rider is given all power and all glory and all authority. He must be what? He must be equal. All nations and peoples of every language worshiped him. One of the 10 Commandments. You will worship me alone. And in all of Israel's text, there are two persons whom they are called to worship. That's Trinity. Well, that's not technically Trinity. We're missing the Spirit. He's in the text. But we're not focusing on him. Two powers in heaven. It's all over. God was super clear. Let's listen to Jesus. And let's just listen to Jesus. Then will appear the sign, Jesus speaking, the Son of Man in heaven. Who's he claiming to be? Son of Man, the cloud rider. And then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Like Jesus can't be more clear who he's claiming to be. I'm not the God of heaven. I'm just the cloud rider. Wait, who is he claiming to be? Yahweh. Right? This is absolute. Jesus is claiming to be equal to God. Matthew 26. You have said so, Jesus replied, but I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the majesty of heaven. Where is he sitting? Where is he sitting? On one of the other thrones. You'll see me sitting there, the Son of Man sitting on one of those thrones, coming on the clouds of heaven. Jesus isn't just making cool stuff up. He's pushing them to their own text. Like you're saying a man can't be God? I'm not claiming to be him. I'm claiming to be that one. Who is that one? He's his equal. I'm claiming to be him. I'm telling you, if you read your text, there's two. Matthew 28. He's talking to the disciples after the resurrection. And Jesus came to them and said, all authority, he's talking to his disciples, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Where? In the throne room. He rode in on the clouds, and God gives Jesus all authority in heaven and on earth. Jesus is absolutely claiming to be that one. Here's a story you probably missed, because I missed it, so I'll just assume on your part. Here it is. Check this out. When Jesus leaves to go back to heaven, in Acts chapter 2, how is it described? Jesus goes up in the clouds, and the clouds are under his feet. Is Luke giving us a weather report, do you think? Oh, when Jesus left, it was weird. I don't know why, but it was a cloudy day, and we wanted to see, why wouldn't God have the cloud? We wanted to watch him go all the way up, but there were clouds in the way. Is that what he's saying? Of course not. When Jesus leaves, what comes and gets him? The clouds. Do you know what the angel who shows up says to the disciples? You do know. He says, the same way you see him leaving will be the way that he returns. How do they see him leaving? On the clouds. Who's going to come back and get you? The cloud rider. That's theological. That is not a weather report. Right? The Bible is a theological book. That is a claim. If Jesus doesn't leave riding the clouds, something's wrong. That's how he travels, declaring himself to be Yahweh. Only Yahweh rides clouds. Who am I? That's who I am. The cloud rider. Jesus, the same way you see me. Now listen to Jesus in John chapter 5. Last text. Awesome. John 5. Jesus arguing with the Jews, trying to get them to understand him. This is early, John 5. Jesus is still working hard to get his people behind him. Listen to this. Jesus gave them this answer. Who are you? Jesus gave them this answer. Truly I tell you, the Son, the image bearer, right? We met him in Ezekiel. He's the image of the glory of God. Jesus gave them this answer. Very truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. The Father loves the Son and shows him all that he does. All right? People who don't know the story go to that saying by Jesus and say, see, Jesus isn't God. He can't do stuff on his own. He can't even tell you, like this, he has to only do what the Father shows him. He's less than. See? Who is Jesus claiming to be in that? Let me ask you this. If there was an absolutely perfect messenger from Yahweh, what would the messenger say? Only what the message sender wanted him to say. Jesus is saying, like, I am the angel, the messenger from heaven. And the messenger from heaven only speaks what the message sender wants him to say. What did Yahweh say from Mount Sinai? Listen to him and hear me. That's literally the text. And Jesus is saying, I am the perfect messenger from God. That's a claim. That is not a claim of Jesus to lesser than God. It is saying, I am that one. That's what I do. I am the perfect messenger from God. I only say what he wants me to say. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it. Who alone can give life? God. Just as the Father gives life, even so I can give life. That's a claim to equal. Who gives life? Who's the creator in Genesis? Yahweh. Yahweh 1. God speaks everything into existence. Genesis chapter 2. God has hands and he bends down and he forms all of creation. He's throwing them back to their text. You have two. You have the invisible God who speaks, and you have the God who forms, who has hands. I am that one. I'm equal. Moreover, the Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to me. What text is that? That's Daniel. I am the judge. It's Sinai, right? He will not forgive your rebellion. It's the angel of the Lord. Who was it? One of the stories from last week. What does he say? It's Abraham. It's the Abraham story. Will the judge of all the earth not do right? Who is Abraham talking to in that story? The angel of the Lord, the perfect messenger from God who only speaks exactly what the Father would want. Speaks to Abraham, and Abraham identifies him as Yahweh, and yet the angel of Yahweh and says to him, you are the judge of all the earth, won't you do right? Jesus says, listen, who am I? I'm the one with all authority, and I'm the one that Abraham spoke to. That's what he is literally speaking to Pharisees who know all these stories. Jesus is not just making some weird comments. He is throwing the people to his text because the Bible tells one story. And the story is there are two powers in heaven. At least two, who bear the name Yahweh. And they're all over your text. I'm that one. That all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. Now that is Mount Sinai. Listen to him, obey me. That is Daniel in the presence of Yahweh. Everyone bowed down and worshiped the cloud rider who also sits on the throne, and he gets all the power, great glory and authority, and all the nations belong to him. Like Jesus is speaking their message, their language. Whoever does not honor the Son doesn't honor the Father. It's two Yahwehs all over the text. Very truly I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes him, that is almost a quote out of Mount Sinai. Listen to him and obey me, whoever hears my words but believes God. How can you hear the words of Jesus and yet believing him? They wouldn't miss it. That's the point. Jesus isn't speaking riddles in John 5. He is speaking their text. He wants them on board. Listen, Jews, go to your story and see that there's two. I'm not making outrageous claims. Know that there's two, and then now come back and evaluate me. Am I fulfilling the text? Am I fulfilling the messianic profile? The answer would be yes. All these are stories. Very truly I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life and will not be judged, but is crossed over from death to life. I can forgive you. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life. My name is in him. And he has given him authority to judge because he is the Son of Man. That is an absolute throwback to Daniel. But so is this. Do not be amazed at this, for a time is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come out. That's a quote from what? Daniel chapter 12. Daniel says that. In the end, you'll hear the voice, and everyone will come out of their graves. Jesus is claiming to be the trumpet, to be the voice that raises the dead. That isn't random. That's Daniel 12. By myself, I can do nothing. I'm not alone. I'm not independent. I'm a unity. I'm a team. By myself, I can do nothing. I judge only what I hear, and my judgment is just, because I am the judge of all the earth, and I will do right. For I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. Two Yahwehs, equal power. Worship me, just like you worship the Father. See me the same, but not superior. You study the scriptures diligently because you think that in them you have eternal life. These stories, these are the very scriptures that testify about me. Like all these references Jesus just said, like they're all about me. Go look. You have two Yahwehs. Do not think I will accuse you before your Father. Your accuser is Moses, on whom you have set, who your hopes are set. If you believed Moses, you would believe me. For he wrote about me. Jesus is taking the stories I'm telling you, and he's pushing them right to these stories. And he's saying, read your text. It won't be a surprise to you. I am not coming out of nowhere. I am not just some mythical answer to all the problems. I am the prophesied one. I have been speaking to you for generations. I've been showing up forever from the very first pages of the text. I have been here and I've been calling you. I'm the God you have always needed. I am the messenger when you're a messenger. I'm the commander when you're the commander. I am the word when you need truth. I am Yahweh, the judge of the earth. I will do right. I have always showed up to relate to you. Hebrews says that he became a man because he's here to redeem men. God of the universe did everything he could do to communicate clearly so that you could have confidence in him above all other gods. His claim has always been that the Messiah will be the Son who is given, who is the image bearer of God and the Redeemer of the earth. The text is one story. Paul isn't getting a hero out of nowhere. It's all over the text. And the Jews knew it. Jesus knew it. He threw them to their text and their own stories and said, believe in me. They said, we can't disprove what you're doing, so we're just going to say there is no two Yahwehs in the Old Testament. Jesus is glorious. He's the cloud rider. You are not worshiping a foreign god. You are worshiping the King of Kings, the God who created you, who has authority above all creatures. Isn't that cool? I think that's so cool. What Paul is saying is this: there is no throne higher than Jesus' throne. There is no power mightier than his power. There is no realm outside of his rule. There is no victory outside of his triumph. And there is no treaty with him outside the blood of the image bearer. Like, this is the story. God is building a family, and he's doing whatever it takes to draw his family back to himself. And he is calling you Jews back to himself, and he is calling you Gentiles back to himself. He is your God, no matter who you are, and he always has been your God. I think that's amazing. Let's pray.